What's going on, everybody? It's Dr. Chris Featherstone here for yet another episode of Unscripted. Listen, it is Tuesday nights. You know what that means. I have some of the biggest, the baddest, the best wrestlers of today and yesteryear. And guess what? Tonight is no different. Why is tonight no different? You always ask me that question. I'm glad you ask every time. Because this person is an absolute legend. And I don't use that term loosely. I've been watching wrestling for a long, long time. This person is an absolute legend in the business. You know, it's I started watching wrestling actually not too long after this person debuted. And so I've got a long time under my belt, probably about 36 years that I've been watching wrestling. And there's I have a list. You know, there's like a top 5 list of uncrowned world champions, and this person is among the top of my list among as far as uncrowned world champions, and I still stand by that because the amount of popularity that this person has had and still has in a different way it's just unprecedented. You know, this, I mean, talk about living the gimmick and just really capitalizing and really making it his own. You know, he's an American boy who made people think that he was from the I think, what was it? I think it was Russia. I think he was being big, like as far as promoting himself from being Russia. And as a kid, I was like, man, I hate Russians because I couldn't stand this guy. I didn't know. I didn't know Russia didn't have anything to do with me. I didn't know anything about Russia, but I knew this guy, and I legit thought he was Russian. I thought he legitimately wanted to come and just ruin America. Him and his uncle Ivan, you know. And so I really appreciate this person making it the gimmick so relevant and so infectious and such a powerful gimmick that people really love to hate him. And then, you know, Dusty capitalized on Gorbachev, you know, that kind of soothing, settling down, and then he became a big baby face, feuded with the Horsemen, and I started to like him. I was like, well, you know what? I think I might like Russians now. So I mean, that's how, when I thought of Russia, I thought of this person. Without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, he is the man and a fellow brother in the faith, Nikita Koloff. How are you tonight, my man?
Dr. C. Hey, man, it's great to be with it. Thank you for the introduction. And thank you, by the way, for being such a long time loyal fan, man. That's amazing. Thank you.
I appreciate it. I was actually a bigger fan of NWA than I was WWE. I watched both, very, frequently, weekly when I was a kid. But there was something about NWA that caught me more. My all-time favorite wrestler, Sting. You're very familiar with Sting, and you know, it was NWA. It was a surfer gimmick. It was something about the characters that really caught me. It was really had an opportunity for me to sink my teeth in, and the wrestling quality was very good too. You know what I mean? And the thing is that like the big man were big man. They would do their clubs and their military presses and and things like that. And then the good guys were people that the fans could really get behind. It was the studio audience back in the day. It was just such a personal type of feel to it that I really invested in. And you were among one of the biggest and most popular names in the mid '80s. And so I've been following you since you started in the NWA, man.
Well, I appreciate listening to your introduction, and it is true. Early on in the career, they did love to hate me, kind of the epitome of evil, if you will, and that was our strategy. Uncle Ivan and I was to take all the gold back to Moscow, back to the Kremlin, back to Red Square. That's right.
Yep. Awesome, man. Before we get into these questions, man, let the listeners know what you're doing nowadays. You're doing some really amazing ministry work.
I am. I appreciate that. Yeah, it's been a whirlwind of a journey, really, from the wrestling career into the last 28 or so years, and now involved essentially full time in ministry. Although I'm still pretty engaged in wrestling in the way of legends events and autograph signings and Comic Cons and that sort of thing, but more focused on ministry. In fact, the shirt I'm wearing tonight, Man Camp alumni. Lex Luger and I, the total package, run a camp together in Georgia. Every spring and fall, we have a camp, and we'll be sure to give all that information where people can learn more about that. I've written books since leaving the ring, 3, working on a 4th book. So I do these camps, conferences. I'll be doing in August, I'll be doing a revival in Missouri, in September down in South Carolina. And I've also, to summarize, I guess I've been, I've been to all 50 states, 30 different countries, and almost 2 years ago now launched a radio show, a podcast, and just most recently a TV show that is now some of that's been aired or downloaded in 64 countries to date, Chris.
Very nice. Very nice.
It's crazy.
Speaking of TV, my wife, she doesn't know much about wrestling as far as old school wrestling is concerned, but she does know who Nikita Koloff is. Why? Because we used to watch the Preacher's Daughters.
Preacher's Daughters. I knew it.
And she's we're both fan of Kobe's music, so it's pretty cool. So she's like,
thank you. Kobe is very gifted and talented. And a quick funny story: I was at a church recently up in Virginia. And the pastor was saying how his daughter knew Nikita, the preacher guy, but his son knew Nikita, the wrestler. And he said it was like, son, daughter in my household listening to 2 very different conversations, and neither knew the other. So it's fun to hear those stories too.
It's kind of like, hey, meet Jesus or meet my Uncle Ivan, your choice. Basically that's
that's right. That's right.
That's to be a part of your ministry.
Either way, you get the Russian sickle.
That's right. You get the sickle regardless. That's right. You ready to get into these questions, my man?
Yeah, let's roll, my brother. Let's roll.
All right. Rorito's asking, greetings from Puerto Rico. What do you think when people say you were wrestling's equivalent of the Drago character in Rocky IV, big, strong, scary, and Russian? And what wrestlers nowadays resemble you?
Ooh, pretty good questions for sure. And some know, some don't know that actually Dolph Lundgren, Nikita Koloff, and Kerry Von Erich were the three finalists to launch to land the role of Ivan Drago in Rocky IV. Fortunately for Lunger, he obviously got the role. I did not. And when I grew the hair out for a short time, actually, I was inspired by the Ivan Drago character with the flat top and all that. I thought, well, if he can pull it off, the Russian Nightmare can pull it off, you know. So that's what inspired that. And then I jokingly, going back a little further than current day, I jokingly say often imitated but never duplicated. When Steve Austin left the NWA and went to New York, you know, shaved his head and took on my likeness. Wink, wink, wink. And of course, to follow that, Bill Goldberg kind of followed, and my understanding kind of patterned his character after the Russian Nightmare. And others have since. I mean, you know, the bald look has become in vogue in today's world, right? So there's a number. The name just slipped me, but just recently on either my Twitter account or my Instagram account, somebody did a comparison with a couple of the more modern day guys, and the name slipped me at the moment, but there are some out there.
Gotcha. Nice. You know, it's interesting that you were responding to a tweet that I had a few months ago when I had my 10-year anniversary from Pancakes and Power Slams, and we had McAultier on the show, and it was pretty cool. We had Magnum and Vince was on the show, and Vince, you know, I do 3 shows with him a week. And he was just marking out, you know, when Magnum came. But it was cool to see that. It was cool to see you interact in that end too. So yeah, man, it's cool to see, you know, 2 rivals. You know, I mean, in 2022, 2 big rivals back in the day. You know, still talking about some wrestling as legends, man. It was cool.
Yeah. I mean, we remain friends. In fact, the revival we do in South Carolina, Magnum will come down and share some of his testimony and some of his story. I think the first on the Sunday night that we do that down there. So yeah, we maintained a long-standing friendship, and of course, you know, that was, you know, through the accident we became, you know, prior to that we were peers in the ring, not necessarily the best of friends, but we became the best of friends post accident.
Nice. Let's see here, Guillermo. How was portraying a foreign heel back then? How was receiving the hate of the public, and how was the crowd when you became the USA champion?
Well, I can't say I can't say we caused a riot, but the level of if you want to say hatred for the Russian Nightmare accelerated that night in the Charlotte Coliseum. That's for sure. When I took the best of 7, number 7 of the best of 7, and the way we unfolded that, you know, from me going up 1-0, 2-0, 3-0, and then Magnum fighting back, you know, 3-1, 3-2, 3-3, and then, you know, of course, taking the 7th and final match. It was easy to get people to chant USA, USA back in those days, as you mentioned on the introduction, of the Cold War era, right? And of course, Uncle Ivan was a master at getting the crowd stirred up as well, whether through an interview or there in the auditorium. And so, you know, I'm thankful that I got to experience both sides. It was very memorable the night I won the U.S. title.
Yes, indeed. You know, it's interesting when you were talking about that and how, you know, he caused, you know, the ire of the fans and had that ability to draw that type of emotion. You know, I think promo work is just such a lost art, you know, in wrestling nowadays. I remember one of the biggest things of the reason why I was so hooked on NWA is because when you had the studio audience, you would have the matches, and then, you know, the winners would come out, take a few steps, and they would get interviewed by Tony Schiavone or Bob Caudle or David Crockett, you know, and they would cut the promo, and I would just be just locked in and glued in to what they had to say. If it was Dusty Baby just riling up the crowd, or if it was someone like you and Uncle Ivan just cutting a heel promo, and it's like, I can't stand this guy. that type of infectious promo work to me is just what really got me into the NWA back in the day. And I think that it's such a lost art nowadays. And that's for one. And for two, I think I'd imagine, maybe you'd agree. I imagine you agree. The promo work then, I imagine, has, helped your ministry work now as far as just the attraction and knowing how to, work the crowd and stuff like that.
Well, yeah. So a couple thoughts there for your viewers to understand. There was not one script I was ever handed for an interview
Right.
ever. So the best term I could come up would share with your views is the interviews, at least mine. I'll just speak for me, and I think many of the other guys as well, were just organic.
Yep.
In other words, who am I wrestling? Where am I wrestling? Is it for a belt? Not a belt? Okay, give me a minute. Okay, let's roll camera. In some of our more localized promos that we did, but then to your point about the studio there and TBS, where we just jump right out of the ring, and that's right there in front of that small crowd, like you said, to stir up that small crowd. And so that's why you saw an even more organic response from the fans for the matches as well, because the majority of matches as well as interviews were spontaneous and organic. And so that's probably the main point I want to drive home, to your viewers tonight, is in relating to that,
Yeah, I agree with you 100% because, I remember as a fan back in the day, the crowd was so small and intimate that it wasn't, it was pretty easy to sway them a certain way. The good guys were the good guys, the bad guys were the bad guys. Now it's cool, but you have, 8, 7, 8, 9,000 people. You can have 60% going toward one way, 40% go toward other way. And watching wrestling, it can kind of be a little bit of confusion to the crowd as far as who's the good guy, who's the bad guy. But when you go into wrestling, kind of, unknowing back in the day, it was no question of who the good guys or the bad guys was, because the intimate crowd kind of bled over to the home audience, and you were like, yeah, I can't stand this guy along with them.
Yeah, well, and we really defined that, right? You take a guy like Ricky the Dragon Steamboat, who back in the terminology back then was what they would call he was the epitome of babyface, right? And or a Magnum TA. And so, lines were pretty clearly drawn on who was bad and who was good. And as far as that goes, I want to comment too real quick on what you said about a lost art when you were talking about the interviews. And that is that was there was an art to the business back then. Now, taking nothing away from the guys in today's world, their athleticism and all of that. But what I want your viewers to understand about both the interviews and the matches is I was taught old school wrestling, what they call old school wrestling psychology by Uncle Ivan and Don Kernodle and eventually others, Dusty Rhodes and Steamboat and Flair and others, where when we went into the ring, we may have known what the outcome was going to be. However, if I'm wrestling Flair for 60 minutes, which I did many, many, many times, for 55 plus of those minutes, that match was spontaneous and improvisational in the ring. There wasn't a whole lot of communication going to the ring, because many times we were actually even in separate dressing rooms in buildings back in those days. And so you're relying totally on just your understanding of the psychology of the business, how to get a fan up or down, on his feet or out of his seat, and again, go back and watch any of that footage, folks, and you'll see just a much more organic response to the NWA matches.
100%. Absolutely. Let's see here. After said that you're one of his favorite people in the world. Shout out to Bill Apter in the building here.
Oh, I love Bill Apter, man. I can't say enough, and I will never stop saying enough good things about Bill Apter, for real. He is just as much as wrestlers in the ring were instrumental on helping build my career and helping to lead to what success I had. Bill After was right there. I mean, from a magazine cover headshot of I Cry a Tear for Magnum TA, or to standing nose to nose to the Road Warriors or Ric Flair, After was instrumental in helping to get my character over, and then maintain, whether it was the heat as a heel or the love of the fan as a baby face. Thank you, Bill. Love you, my friend.
Yes, indeed. Back in the After days, you were a rule breaker. That was the terminology for the magazines back in the day.
I was, but for some reason the referee never caught me.
Yeah, never caught you. Yeah. Tommy Young was the big referee back in the day, wasn't he? Yeah,
one of the best of the best.
Did the old Dusty finish a bunch of the times, man.
Tommy Young's one of the best of the best when it came to refereeing.
Absolutely. Riju's asking, what do you think of Ric Flair wrestling again?
Well, my hope is I feel confident in get in the ring. My hope is he can get out of the ring. That's my hope. That's my prayer. I'm like, wow, okay. I mean, I get it. Well, at the same time, I'm like, Rick, just be careful, please, Rick. I mean,
be careful. Yes, indeed. Well, his opponent is still up for grabs. Could it be? Could we get a return of the sickle?
Well, I have been back in the gym again. I don't know. I'm trying to, let me see here.
Nice. Okay. All right. I'm just
all
saying.
Things are possible in wrestling. All things.
That's right.
You know what it used to say in the old promotional cards, right? It used to say card subject to change. So, you never know.
Yes, indeed. Let's see here. Reach is also asking, do you see elements of Dusty Rhodes in his son Cody, baby?
Oh, goodness. I mean, I love to imitate Dusty. We were the super powers, if you will.
That's right.
Nikita Koloff and the son of a plumber from Austin, Texas, baby. I mean, my goodness. Yeah, Cody's almost a spitting image of Dusty, and certainly picked up where the dream left off. And kudos to Cody for all of his success and what he's accomplished, following in his father's footsteps. So without a doubt.
Good stuff. How's Luger doing? Chris is asking.
Luger's doing great. I mean, he's in, even though he had the spinal cord injury, he'd be the first to tell you he in fact, he said this at our last camp in April to all the guys that were attending. He said, you may not believe this. Hopefully you will. But he goes, I'm in better health now than when I was back, jacked up the total package back in the days. I mean, no medicines. He gets a checkup every 6 months.
Nice.
He goes out, he walks, he exercises. When he lived with me in 2015, we went to the gym 4 or 5 days a week. And so Lex is doing great. Just saw him a couple weeks ago, and he's doing wonderful.
Nice. Love to hear that. How was your experience working with the AWA?
Well, Stephen, it was a kind of a co-branding thing. What I mean by that is Vern and Jimmy Crockett did a number of co-promotions together.
Yep.
Some of the bigger shows in the Meadowlands up in New Jersey. And so I wasn't under contract to Vern or to the AWA, and I wasn't necessarily on loan to the AWA, but because of those promotional shows we did, I had Jim Crockett's blessing to go up and of course, the AWA was struggling at the time, so I went up and had some matches for their world title against the living legend himself, Larry Zbyszko, and that's great, Chris. And mainly did TV for him just to try to help with ratings, and although I did a handful of house shows for him as well. But it was interesting working for Vern. I have to say, it was interesting.
Nice. Let's see. Jim is asking, who was the toughest wrestler you had to wrestle in the NWA?
The toughest, by toughest, Jim, I don't know if he means strongest or
maybe shoot tough.
Well, I mean, there were several of those. I mean, Dr. Death, Steve Williams. When you talk about shooters, I mean, of course, the Steiner brothers, Mike Rotundo.
Oh, okay.
Syracuse University, but certainly Dr. Death, Steve Williams, Oklahoma. I mean, there's some of these guys, man, they could in a heartbeat tie you up and make you feel like a pretzel. I used to joke with those guys. I go, hey guys, well, I say joke, but I'm like, I'm here on the entertainment side of this thing. Don't be doing any chicken wings or single legs on me, or I'm in the dressing room to get your hand raised. But so as far as shooters go, just strength wise, Van Vader, as big as he was, had a reputation for being somewhat reckless. In fact, officially, my last match was against him where he injured my neck. And I didn't know till the next day, but I had a hernia, picking him up for big body slam, again, big guy, right? He was a tough one, just tough to work with. The Road Warriors were just tough. Another one I would mention is Barb, my man Barbarian, Barbarian.
Nice.
That dude, those island guys, bro, they are just tough.
Yes, Haku is he's widely known as the toughest among the toughest. So you did your final loop in '92 with Vader, right?
Yeah, I mean the majority of matches. I mean, I had some matches against Rick Rude. They were just really, honestly, they weren't really. Looking back, even at the time, I felt like utilizing me, maximizing my potential.
Agreed.
Just throwing me in matches, really, in my view, really just made no sense. I mean, I didn't really do any kind of a real angle with Vader. They just threw me because I was a big guy. He was a big guy. They threw us together. Rick Rude. I mean, so they were just throwing me in different, six-mans with, Barry Windham and Dustin Rhodes. I mean, just random matches without any real angles, which is part of the reason too. It wasn't just the injury. The injuries were not career ending, but I was like, it's time, because part of it was my goal to leave on top anyway. I'm like, I've had enough, so walked away.
Now Watts was out at that time, right? Was it Hurd that was in charge?
No, Hurd was early on in the buyout. Watts came in. I want to say it was still Bill Watts when I left. That was still at the helm, I think, but don't quote me on that.
Because I know that Flair and Hurd had some issues. Yeah,
major
Flair. Yeah, Flair came in '90. He came to WWE in '91, I believe it was.
Yeah,
and that's when him and Hurd was, having some issues. So
yeah, I think they brought Watts in, after that or something.
Gotcha. Let's see here. A few more. Let's see. Domingo's asking, it was great watching you compete at such a high level against Mag on TA and teaming with Dusty Rhodes and the Road Warriors against the Horsemen. Yeah. So you have any cool stories about your times with competing against any of them or Dusty stories?
Certainly great memories. I'll just the one I'll mention just briefly is the first ever WarGames. Superpowers and the Road Warriors with Paul Ellering against the Horsemen with J.J. Dillon. That was electrifying. Again, often imitated, never duplicated. I think the first of anything, typically, if it's a hit, is hard to duplicate. Although when we did the Sting Squadron, we had that was memorable as well. But certainly the original one with Dusty and I and the Road Warriors. Incredibly memorable. Any matches against the Horsemen in any combination, a single match against Ric Flair, a tag against Tully Blanchard, Arn Anderson, two of the consummate professional wrestlers in the business still to this day, Tully and Arn. Just go down the list of, again, any combination, 8-man, 6-man, sold out arena and over the 4th of July in in the Cap Center, with us in an 8-man against each other. So some of those matches are certainly memorable. Just recently, I was reminded of this only because I went to see the movie, the new movie Elvis. I was a huge Elvis fan, and I was reminded Dusty and I toured Graceland together. My first tour ever of Graceland was with the Dream, the Nightmare and the Dream toured Graceland together. So that was a favorite memory outside of the ring.
Very nice. We got a couple super chats. Super chats comes first, so we're going to tackle these super chats and we're going to close up. Alex is 199 super chat. What promotion had the best ring, the best to bump in? Interesting question there.
Well, hands down, the NWA.
Nice.
Again, the AWA used those ropes, and I remember the first couple of times I hit those ropes, man, I thought I was going to end up out in the 4th row because the NWA were steel cable ropes, and Klondike Bill was one of our ring guys. He was an old school wrestler from the 60s, 70s. I mean, he had it down. He knew how to put those rings together. They weren't super padded, but they were padded enough that you weren't going to get hurt or injured. And then some of the random shows I was in for smaller promotions had like boxing rings, which were brutal. But definitely the NWA, best to bump in. Nice. Thank you, Alex.
Another 199 super chat. Thank you for the super chat. Who'd win in a shoot? Prime Haku or Prime Brock?
Brock is tough, but I'm still going to go with the Island Boy, man. I'm sorry. They have just such raw, natural strength and I got to go with my Island Boy.
Yeah, good stuff, man. All right, man. It's been a pleasure. We're going to close up with that. Again, let the listeners know what you're up to nowadays and where to find you on social media.
Yeah, check me out. It's kind of a one-stop shop, guys. Go to koloff.net, KOLOFF.net. And on koloff.net, here's what you're going to find. You're going to find links to all of my social media, Twitter, Facebook. If you're looking for me on Facebook, make sure you look for the one Standing in a River. That's me, the $1 Million Man, Ted DiBiase, and another wrestler named Jason Sanderson in the Jordan River in Israel. We are doing a baptismal there in Israel on Facebook. You can link to my podcast there. You can watch the new Man Up TV show and link there on koloff.net. Go to my store and pick up. In fact, here they are right here. Okay, so. Wrestling with Success, nice. Developing a Championship Mentality, a great motivational book. If you want inspiration, newly updated, Nikita, a Tale of the Ring and Redemption. That one is just several new chapters just to add. You can get the book there. And you can find more about the Man Camp. You can link to Man Camp and find out about this camp that Lex and I now co-facilitate and maybe come. Our next one's in October. Maybe come be a part of that. And one last thing, we've got you'll get information on this on the website as well. We got a huge men's conference coming up right here where I'm at tonight in Fort Mill, South Carolina, Heritage Conference Center with Lieutenant General Jerry Boykin of Black Hawk Down, Al Wood, NBA, and UNC basketball star Al Wood, Lex Luger. And so many other phenomenal speakers at our men's conference, August 25th to the 27th. So, Dr. Chris, appreciate you having me on tonight.
So, I would not be a true fan, Nikita, if I let you leave my show without giving me a little bit of old school Nikita talking about your Uncle Ivan.
Well, Uncle Ivan Chatoeta. He was a great man. Uncle Ivan was a great man. And he was a great mentor to nephew Nikita. And I want to say this for last thing. You are watching UnSKripted with Dr. Chris. You better stay tuned in to Dr. Chris or the Russian nightmare come look for you. That's right. And the Russian sickle and you go down.
Very nice.
Ah!
Love it. Love it. Very, very, very nice. Thank you, man. It's been a pleasure. Thanks so much for spending time with us tonight.
Thank you, my brother. God bless you. Have a wonderful night. All your viewers out there. Hope to see you down the road somewhere. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, man. Have a good night.
All right, you too.